Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really powerful idea, how our thoughts aren't just floating around, but actually shape the lives we lead,
Yeah.
influencing our habits or circumstances.
It's profound stuff.
Yeah, and we're drawing heavily from As a Man Thinketh today. Think of your mind, for a second, like a garden that's a central idea from the text.
That's such a great analogy, isn't it? Because a garden will produce something. If you're not actively planting useful seeds, good thoughts, basically then, well, weeds will just pop up.
Exactly. Those negative thoughts, the unproductive stuff, it just takes root if you're not, tending to it.
Right. If it's left wild.
And that's really the core of what we want to dig into, understanding that active role you play, that each of us plays, as the master gardener of our own mind.
And how that directly translates to your life, your experiences.
It's about realizing you have this power, this ability to cultivate the good stuff and, weed out the bad.
So let's really get into that garden analogy. It's not just about having a mind, is it? It needs that intelligent cultivation.
Right. Otherwise, it just runs wild.
And the weeds, the useless, unwanted thoughts, they naturally thrive if you don't put something better in there. It really highlights that we need to be, active participants.
It puts a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, doesn't it?
It does.
Like a gardener can't just blame the weeds if they never planted flowers, right?
Yeah.
So we can't easily disconnect our thoughts from what happens around us.
The source material even uses that phrase, master gardener of your soul. It's quite poetic.
It really is.
Yeah.
And director of your life. It suggests this control comes through mindfully managing your thoughts.
And look, this isn't just like a nice metaphor. The text draws a very clear, direct line. It says, thought and character are one.
Okay.
And as character can only manifest and discover itself through environment and circumstance, the outer conditions of a person's life will always be found to be harmoniously related to his inner state.
Wow. Okay. Let's unpack that. Harmoniously related. So it's not saying everything bad that happens is because you're a bad person or...
No, not necessarily a complete one-to-one reflection of your entire character at every moment. But it is pointing to this really strong link between your dominant thought patterns, the things you habitually think about, and the kind of situations you tend to find yourself in.
Like certain thoughts make certain experiences more likely.
More resonant. Exactly. Think about it. Your current circumstances, whether you love them or hate them, they're probably connected in some vital way to the thoughts you've been consistently feeding your mind.
So it's not just random chance where we end up.
The text argues quite strongly that it's generally not chance. It's more often the result of the thoughts that have become woven into the fabric of your character. And this applies whether you feel totally content or deeply frustrated with things.
So even the really difficult stuff, the struggles, they might have a purpose then, not just bad luck.
Well, according to this perspective, yes. Challenging circumstances often act as lessons, spiritual lessons, you could say, that push us towards growth.
And as we learn those lessons, change internally.
The circumstances themselves tend to shift and evolve. It reflects that inner change.
Which leads us away from feeling like we're just, pushed around by life. The book says buffeted by circumstances.
Right. Towards becoming more of a conscious creator, realizing you can actually influence that hidden soil and seeds inside you.
Your core beliefs, your habitual thoughts.
Yeah. The very things from which circumstances grow. And when you grasp that, you start becoming the rightful master of yourself. You move from victim to agent.
It's a huge shift in perspective.
Massive. And the text observes something interesting. People who actually practice self-control, who consciously work on their inner world, they start noticing a direct link
between their mental state changing and their outer world changing.
Exactly. It says even relatively rapid inner progress can lead to a whole succession of changes in life experience. Have you ever noticed that yourself? A real internal shift happens, and suddenly things outside seem to realign.
Definitely. It feels like that sometimes.
And there's this idea, maybe we'd call it a form of the law of attraction, but focused internally. The text says the soul attracts what it secretly harbors.
Harbors, meaning what it holds on to.
Yeah, what it secretly loves, but also what it fears, what it dwells on habitually. Our deepest hopes and our deepest anxieties, even the unacknowledged ones, they play a part in drawing circumstances to us.
So those little thought seeds, the ones we barely notice sometimes, they actually matter.
Oh, absolutely. Every thought that takes root, that you allow to stay and grow, will eventually blossom into action. And those actions bear fruit.
The fruit being opportunities, circumstances.
Right. Good thoughts, good fruit. Bad thoughts, bad fruit. It sounds simple, maybe, But the idea is the outer world constantly adapts itself to your inner world.
Even the unpleasant stuff.
Yes, both pleasant and unpleasant conditions, the text argues, are ultimately contributing to your growth, your good.
This really hammers home the personal responsibility angle, doesn't it? It kind of takes away the option of just blaming fate or other people.
It really does. The text is quite blunt. It says people arrive at their condition, whether it's, the almshouse or the jail, as it puts it, through the pathway of their own thoughts and desires, not because of some external tyranny.
And the flip side is true, too.
Oh,
A virtuous life comes from cultivating the right thoughts.
exactly. It's built on consistently nurtured aspirations. It's not just luck.
And says circumstances reveal character. They don't make it. That's interesting. So external pressure can't make you fall into vice unless...
Unless there was already an inclination there, yeah. Some
Yeah.
weakness you hadn't dealt with, just like good fortune alone can't make you virtuous if you haven't cultivated virtue within yourself.
It keeps coming back to the inner work.
Always. The text calls each person the lord and master of thought, and because of that, the maker of himself and the shaper and author of environment.
Wow. Shaper and author of environment. That's huge.
It even suggests that from birth, the soul draws conditions that reflect its own state of being.
That's a challenging idea. But the core seems to be we attract what we are deep down, not just what we say we want.
Precisely. Our dominant inner state gets mirrored back. The divinity that shapes our ends is in ourselves, it says. We set our own limits with our thoughts.
Okay, so if that's true, what about trying to change things? When people are really fighting their circumstances.
Well, the text suggests that fighting against circumstances is often like fighting an external effect while still feeding the internal cause.
Like complaining about the symptom but ignoring the disease.
Sort of. You might be holding on to a conscious vice, or maybe just an unconscious weakness, a negative thought pattern you haven't rooted out. And that's the real source of the problem.
And you see this all the time, right? People want things to be different. Maybe they want more money or better health, but they aren't willing to look at their own contribution, their own habits or thinking.
Exactly. That reluctance to work on oneself, to improve oneself, is why people often stay stuck, according to this view. They want the circumstances to change without changing internally.
The source gives examples, doesn't it?
It does. Pretty clear ones. Like, the poor man who shirks his work, maybe cuts corners, tries to deceive his employer.
But desperately wants more comfort and security.
Right. But his thoughts are focused on indolence, deception. So those thought habits actually attract more wretchedness, not less. It's counterintuitive if you don't see the connection.
Or the rich person indulging in, say, gluttony, wanting good health, but refusing to change their eating habits.
They lack the understanding or the willingness to align their actions with their desire for health. Their habits, driven by desire, make them unfit for the health they crave.
And the employer cutting wages to maximize profit, then getting hit by bankruptcy and blaming the market.
When maybe their own short-sighted, perhaps greedy actions and thoughts created the conditions for that failure. These aren't meant as judgments necessarily, but as illustrations.
Illustrations of how we unconsciously create our circumstances through thoughts and desires that might actually contradict what we think we want.
Exactly. It's about the underlying pattern.
So our thoughts aren't really secret then. They manifest.
Not according to this. Thoughts rapidly crystallize into habit, and habit solidifies into circumstance. It's a process.
Crystallize, like forming a solid structure.
Yeah. They're not just fleeting things. They build patterns, become ingrained, and then shape your reality.
And the book gives a whole list of these pathways, right? Like specific thought patterns leading to specific kinds of circumstances.
It does. It's quite detailed. For instance, it links bestial thoughts to habits of maybe drunkenness or sensuality, which then lead to circumstances of destruction and disease.
That's intense. What else?
Impure thoughts leading to draining habits and distracting circumstances. Thoughts of fear, doubt, and indecision crystallizing into weak, irresolute habits, leading to failure, poverty, dependence.
Okay, I see the pattern. Lazy thoughts.
Leading to habits of uncleanliness or dishonesty, manifesting as foulness and beggary. Hateful or condemnatory thought.
Violence and persecution.
Accusation and violence leading to injury and persecution, yeah. And selfish thoughts leading to selfish habits, which ultimately bring distressing circumstances.
But it works the other way too, doesn't it? The positive side.
Oh, absolutely. That's crucial. Beautiful thoughts foster habits of grace and kindness, leading to genial and sunny circumstances.
That sounds nice.
Pure thoughts cultivate temperance and self-control, resulting in repose and peace. Thoughts of courage, self-reliance, and decision.
Build strong, manly habits, as the text puts it, leading to success, abundance, freedom.
Energetic thoughts foster cleanliness and industry, leading to pleasant surroundings. Gentle and forgiving thoughts create gentle habits, attracting protective circumstances.
And loving, unselfish thoughts.
They lead to habits of self-forgetfulness in the service of others, resulting, the text says, in abiding prosperity and true riches.
So the takeaway is that these patterns, good or bad, if they persist, will impact your character and your life situation.
Inevitably, that's the core argument. You can't directly choose your circumstances, maybe, not moment to moment.
But you can choose your thoughts.
Exactly. And by choosing your thoughts, you are indirectly but powerfully shaping those circumstances over time.
And nature, or the universe, kind of plays along.
The text suggests it does. Nature seems to help bring about opportunities that align with your most encouraged thoughts, both the helpful and the harmful ones.
So changing your thoughts really can change your world.
That's the promise. Let go of the negative, degrading thoughts, and your whole world seems to soften. Cultivate the positive, strong thoughts, and doors start to open.
And there's this mention of will as well,
Yeah.
like willpower.
Yes, but maybe something even deeper. It's described as this powerful force within us, an offspring of a deathless soul, something capable of overcoming huge obstacles, smashing through walls of granite.
So it's not just passive thinking. There's an active force involved too.
Right. It encourages patience, though, understanding that the universe doesn't just bend instantly, but it will respond to a spirit that is calm, knowing, and commanding from within.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, the big message from As a Man Thinketh seems crystal clear. You have this incredible power to shape your life.
Immense power. And it starts with cultivating your thoughts, tending that inner garden.
Which brings us back to that initial metaphor. It really makes you pause and ask yourself, doesn't it? What kind of garden am I actually tending right now?
What seeds are you planting day after day? What weeds are you letting run wild? It's a really practical question.
Yeah. And maybe for you listening, think about one area where you feel stuck, where you've been focusing on external fixes. Could there be an internal weed, an ingrained thought pattern? That's actually the root cause.
Exploring that connection between your dominant thoughts and your current situation, that's powerful work.
It really is. Mastering your thoughts. It sounds like a continuous journey, not a destination. But maybe it's the key to mastering life itself.
That's certainly the perspective offered here. A journey towards greater self-awareness, greater responsibility, and ultimately greater power over your own experience.